$14 million. That is what a Williamsburg developer quietly paid for a 10,000 square foot building at 66 North 6th Street in December 2025. A building that has been one of the most important small music venues in America for nearly a quarter century. Richard Linklater filmed the opening scene of School of Rock inside it. Elliott Smith played his last New York shows there before he died. Kendrick Lamar, Harry Styles, Coldplay, Ed Sheeran, and Tyler the Creator all played secret, sweat-soaked underplays in a room that holds only 650 people, years before they filled arenas. The sale closed 6 days before the public even knew the venue was in danger. This is not just a story about a concert hall. It is a story about what happens to a neighborhood's cultural memory when the real estate underneath it becomes worth more than the culture itself. The physical conversion of 66 North 6th Street began in 2000. Architects Brian Sweer and Michael Constantine took over a former commercial warehouse, stripping the brick and timber structure to design a raw, three-level performance space that retained its rugged industrial character. When Northsix officially opened its doors in the spring of 2001, the cultural geography of New York's live music scene was strictly Manhattan-centric. Manhattan was the only New York City borough where audiences reliably found indie rock and avant-garde concerts, leaving Brooklyn largely ignored as a performance destination. While many artists lived in Brooklyn, they still had to travel to Manhattan to play. Northsix dismantled that divide, establishing a permanent bridgehead for the underground across the East River. Even before the official spring opening, a series of Thursday night experimental sessions held in the basement between December 2000 and February 2003 became an active incubator for the local scene, allowing artists to hone their sound before touring nationally. By 2002, the Village Voice named Northsix New York City's best new rock club, cementing its status as an important platform for avant-garde acts that struggled to find a home in traditional, risk-averse Manhattan rooms. The venue's unvarnished interior quickly caught the attention of filmmakers and legendary musicians alike. In early 2003, director Richard Linklater chose the club's distinctive stage to film the opening sequence of School of Rock, casting the room as the sweat-soaked showcase for the fictional band No Vacancy. Just months later, in May 2003, the room hosted 3 quiet, stark performances by Elliott Smith. These raw acoustic sets would stand as his final public appearances in New York before his tragic death that October. But maintaining an independent DIY outpost in a changing neighborhood invited immediate regulatory friction. On March 15, 2003, the FDNY abruptly shut down the venue during a performance by the radical punk ska collective Leftover Crack. While city officials officially cited an expired fire safety permit to justify the closure, critics and supporters argued the raid was direct, politically motivated retaliation for the band's aggressively anti-authoritarian lyrics. It took a month of tense negotiations and permit resolutions before Northsix was permitted to reopen, showing the constant, fragile balance between grassroots culture and city bureaucracy. By 2007, the raw underground era of Northsix hit a financial wall. The rapid gentrification of Williamsburg brought a wave of new development and soaring commercial rents, making it impossible for the venue's original operators to sustain the lease. The very neighborhood Northsix had helped transform into a cultural destination was becoming too expensive for the independent pioneers who built it. At the same time, Manhattan-based promoter The Bowery Presents was looking to expand across the East River. Formed in 2004, the company had established itself as a major force in New York's live music scene, managing operations at Webster Hall, the Mercury Lounge, and the Bowery Ballroom. Acquiring the North 6th Street lease allowed them to bring their professional booking infrastructure to Brooklyn, framing the move as a long-term investment. Partners Jim Glancy and John Moore later reflected on the acquisition. In September of 2007, our commitment to and focus on artist development led us to what many considered a new frontier, Williamsburg, Brooklyn. They noted that Music Hall of Williamsburg arrived at a time when the North Brooklyn neighborhood was having a cultural awakening, and we were among the first music clubs to open in the neighborhood and establish tenure. The transition to the Music Hall of Williamsburg in 2007 brought a continuation of the location's musical legacy alongside a complete structural rupture. The partners rebuilt the interior of the former warehouse, creating an optimized acoustic space. The redesigned venue accommodates approximately 650 patrons across 3 levels, featuring tiered seating, balconies, and 3 bars. While this overhaul provided Brooklyn with a durable room capable of hosting national tours, it also placed the venue at the center of an escalating real estate boom. The upgraded space was far more resilient than its DIY predecessor, but it now had to survive in a neighborhood where rising property values threatened to outpace the value of culture. Over the next 18 years, 66 North 6th Street operated as an important engine for American live music, growing from a local Williamsburg room into a main proving ground for some of the biggest names in the global industry. The venue functioned not merely as a booking stop, but as a deliberate, structured incubator. For an emerging artist, securing a date at this 650-capacity space was a clear marker of progress, a major step between small DIY gigs and the massive commercial pressures of larger halls. The roster of performers who passed through this mid-size room during their formative years reads like a modern music history book. Audiences in Brooklyn witnessed early career performances by Mumford & Sons, Tame Impala, St. Vincent, Ed Sheeran, and Tyler, the Creator. Long before they played global arenas, Brandi Carlile, The XX, The Weeknd, Robin, and Disclosure stood on this exact stage, refining their sound in front of a few hundred people. The venue also nurtured the rising careers of acts like The War on Drugs, King Gizzard, and the Lizard Wizard, Tyler Childers, and Sturgill Simpson. In more recent years, it served as an essential launching pad for Phoebe Bridgers, Idols, and Maggie Rogers. This steady stream of talent was part of an organized promotional mechanism. The Bowery Presents built a ladder for artists to climb, with the Music Hall of Williamsburg acting as the first major rung. In official retrospectives, the promoters described this exact progression, noting that several of these artists grew their careers and audiences with Bowery through our larger clubs and on to arenas and stadiums. An artist might start at North 6th Street, move to the 1,800-capacity Brooklyn Steel or the 3,000-capacity Terminal 5, and eventually headline major athletic arenas. But the room's value also worked in reverse. For artists who had already graduated to stadiums, the venue offered a rare chance to strip away the massive video screens and stadium security to return to a raw, physical connection with their audience. These surprise, highly exclusive performances became known as underplays. In 2016, Kendrick Lamar took the stage for an intense, high-energy set that felt worlds away from the festival main stages he was headlining. In 2020, Harry Styles announced a last-minute show, packing the room with fans who could normally only see him from the upper decks of an arena. The alternative metal band Deftones returned to these intimate confines in 2023, delivering a blistering, raw set to 650 people. Then, in 2024, Coldplay took over the room for a special underplay, celebrating the release of their 10th studio album by playing their soaring anthems just feet away from the barrier. Even as the neighborhood outside changed, the venue's internal engine never stopped running. Through 2025, the room maintained a busy schedule, booking national and international acts most nights of the week and showing no signs of slowing down. Acclaimed London-based jazz saxophonist Nubia Garcia performed on the North 6th Street stage as recently as 2025, proving that the space remained as culturally relevant to the international avant-garde as it was during its early DIY years. This active, packed calendar continued right up until the sudden December announcement, showing that the room's threat of closure was never a question of declining cultural utility or empty rooms, but a direct consequence of the physical real estate it occupied. On January 30th, 2017, global entertainment giant AEG Live finalized the acquisition of a 50% stake in the Bowery Presents. This corporate transaction brought the operations of the Music Hall of Williamsburg, along with regional sister venues like Terminal 5, Brooklyn Steel, Rough Trade NYC, Union Transfer in Philadelphia, and the Sinclair in Boston, into a massive international booking network. Bowery Presents partner Jim Glancy framed the partnership as a major step forward, stating, "We are excited to join forces with the like-minded innovators that make up the AEG Live family. This will allow us to not only run the Bowery Presents autonomously and stay true to our entrepreneurial spirit, but increase our reach within our existing markets." Yet, the deal did not cover the entire Bowery portfolio. The iconic Bowery Ballroom and Mercury Lounge were completely excluded from the AEG transaction. Co-founder Michael Swire retained separate ownership of those two Manhattan rooms, steering them instead into an alliance with AEG's chief rival, Live Nation, under the newly formed Mercury East Presents later that same year. Meanwhile, across the East River, the Music Hall of Williamsburg operated as a cornerstone of a rapidly expanding local music scene. Nearby spaces like Brooklyn Bowl and National Sawdust turned North Brooklyn into one of the most concentrated performance corridors in the entire country, attracting thousands of concert-goers every night. But as the corporate booking battles intensified, a fundamental division remained. While AEG now controlled the promotions and day-to-day operations at 66 North 6th Street, the multinational conglomerate did not buy the physical property. The actual brick and mortar of the warehouse remained in the hands of private real estate landlords, keeping the venue's physical existence entirely separate from its corporate marquee. On December 17, 2025, an internal memorandum sent by Bowery Presents partners Jim Glancy and John Moore turned the venue's cultural legacy into an active contractual countdown. Trade publication. Variety first broke the news to the public, revealing that the long-term tenure of the Music Hall of Williamsburg had run into a hard legal limit. The document explicitly laid out the terms of the non-renewal, stating, "After nearly 2 decades, the Bowery Presents has been notified by the owners of 66 North 6th Street that our lease for Music Hall of Williamsburg will not be renewed, and our time in the building will come to an end at the conclusion of 2026. This notice did not signal an immediate shutdown, but rather initiated a deliberate, year-long period of activity before the lease expired. Instead of locking the doors, the organizers planned to run the room at full capacity through its final 12 months. Glancy and Moore promised in the memo, "We will continue to produce shows at Music Hall throughout next year, making each moment count for rising talent and returning stars, ensuring the legacy of this venue and its impact on both the neighborhood and music overall is secured in history." By focusing their remaining time on fostering emerging acts and hosting intimate performances, the operators sought to frame the final year as an active celebration rather than a slow decline. The memo concluded with a direct call to their staff. "Let's make our final year on North 6th Street one to remember." At the time of the announcement, the physical future of the structure remained entirely blank. Bowery Presents stated that the company was completely unaware of what the building owners planned to do with the physical property once the keys were handed over. The promoters had also not identified an alternate location to replace the room with a capacity of 650, leaving the future of the brand itself completely unresolved as the clock began ticking toward December 31, 2026. Behind the public lease announcement lay a paper trail buried in the municipal registry. On December 11, 2025, 6 days before Bowery Presents notified its staff of the non-renewal, a quiet transaction decided the physical future of 66 North 6th Street. The 10,000-square-foot brick building, which had housed live music for nearly a quarter of a century, was sold. The seller was Asana Partners, a real estate investment firm based in Charlotte, North Carolina. Asana had entered the Williamsburg market in early 2019, purchasing this historic building alongside an adjoining storefront for $15.9 million. To finance their North Brooklyn acquisitions, Asana secured a $26.5 million mortgage from Cinevis Bank in May 2021, a liability that covered 66, 70, and 93 North 6th Street. Property filings show Asana fulfilled and satisfied this multi-million-dollar mortgage obligation in October 2025, clearing the title and preparing the property for disposition. On December 11, 2025, Asana sold the building to local developer Michael Weitzman, the chief executive officer of W Development. The sale price was $14 million. According to reporting by Crane's New York Business, this represented a loss of more than 10% on Asana's original investment. Asana spokesperson Julie C. Dukeworth confirmed the transaction, telling the New York Post that Asana Partners sold this property on December 11th. To fund the $14 million purchase, Weitzman's W Realty borrowed $10.5 million from T30 Capital. While the closing occurred on December 11th, the official deed was not recorded in the automated city register information system until January 9, 2026. This weeks-long lag between the private signing and the public recording created an informational gap, leaving the public to parse the lease termination without knowing who had acquired the property. The timeline of the negotiations remains subject to conflicting reports. Some industry accounts place Weitzman's first contact with the owners as early as September 2024, indicating a year-long discussion behind closed doors. Other accounts suggest the initial contact occurred in September 2025. Regardless of the exact start date, the documented sequence of events leads to a clear conclusion. Negotiations to sell the property were underway long before the promoters and staff learned their lease would not be renewed. This transaction turned a vital performance space into a high-stakes real estate play. With no replacement venue identified and the existing lease set to expire, the quiet sale of December 11, 2025 initiated the active countdown toward the end of 2026. Michael Weitzman, the chief executive officer of W Development, has established a prominent presence in the local real estate market. His firm concentrates heavily on North Brooklyn, assembling a portfolio of commercial and residential assets designed to capitalize on the area's high property values. Another piece of this portfolio sits on Wythe Avenue. In 2022, Weitzman acquired the commercial property at 83 Wythe Avenue from Cayuga Capital for $20 million. The building, designed by Arcumera Architecture, stands 84 feet tall and encompasses 88,680 square feet of space. The transaction established W Development's ability to manage large-scale, high-density properties in the heart of Williamsburg's commercial district. W's work also extends into neighboring Greenpoint, where the firm took over the Polonaise Terrace at 144 Greenpoint Avenue. The historic two-story structure was long known as a local wedding venue. Weitzman's firm initiated plans to convert the property into a 35-unit mixed-use residential building. Because the Polonaise Terrace is a designated historic landmark, the project faced formal review by the Landmarks Preservation Commission. Landmark status imposes strict legal limits on construction, restricting changes to a building's original exterior and structural framework to preserve its historic character. The three-story warehouse at 66 North 6th Street offers no such regulatory shield. In contrast to the Polonaise Terrace, the Music Hall of Williamsburg has no landmark protections. The lack of historic designation leaves the property owner with far fewer restrictions on what can be done to the physical structure once the current lease runs out. To date, Weitzman has made no public statements about his plans for 66 North 6th Street. This silence has kept the future of the building unconfirmed, leaving observers to look at his past development projects to understand what might happen when the music stops. The vulnerability of 66 North 6th Street reflects a pattern sweeping across the city's nightlife. In East Williamsburg, the Brooklyn Mirage experienced a sudden shutdown, exposing the operational precarity of even the largest electronic music spaces. Meanwhile, across the East River, plans surfaced to convert the Bowery Electric, a separate Bowery-affiliated venue in Manhattan, into a theater. Industry observers connect these developments to persistent real estate pressures bearing down on small and mid-sized cultural venues citywide. While these comparison cases provide a broader backdrop rather than a direct cause of the lease non-renewal at 66 North 6th Street, they show a citywide squeeze on independent live music spaces that has intensified over the last decade. The shift reveals a harsh reality. Proven commercial success does not automatically secure a long-term tenancy. Even when a room is consistently packed, the ground beneath the building is often worth more to developers than the ticket sales are to operators. Yet these venues function as essential infrastructure for artists, workers, audiences, and neighboring businesses alike. They support touring musicians on stage while employing a quiet workforce of sound engineers, lighting technicians, bartenders, and security staff. They also drive consistent foot traffic to surrounding bars and restaurants, anchoring the local economy. When a venue is displaced, the entire community feels the impact. As the calendar turns, the Music Hall of Williamsburg enters its final operating year. The room remains active, booking national tours and drawing nightly crowds, but the countdown toward December 31st, 2026, has officially begun. The venue's future remains unresolved, balanced between its rich cultural memory and the commercial pressures of the land it occupies. The calendar shows 2026, and the lights inside 66 North 6th Street remain bright. On any given night, crowds still pack the floor, bands still tune their guitars backstage, and ticket holders queue along the block under the marquee. The Music Hall of Williamsburg continues booking and producing shows exactly as promised, keeping the room fully operational throughout the year. The space operates as an active, breathing room. It is an extended farewell played out in real time, night after night, chord after chord. Yet every performance brings the venue closer to a hard legal boundary. On December 31st, 2026, the lease officially expires. When that midnight deadline passes, the music stops, and the keys return to the landlord. What happens on January 1st, 2027, remains entirely unwritten. The new owner, developer Michael Weitzman, has offered no public statements or filings indicating his plans for the 10,000-square-foot warehouse. No demolition has been confirmed. No preservation plan has been proposed. No next tenant or replacement use has been identified. This leaves the building's fate suspended in genuine uncertainty. Weitzman's development firm, W Realty, has a record of converting older properties in Brooklyn, including the historic Polonaise Terrace in Greenpoint. But while that project faced strict oversight due to its official landmark status, the former warehouse on North 6th Street carries no such legal shield. It is an unlandmarked building in a high-value real estate district, meaning the owner has no legal obligation to preserve the room or its cultural history. This lack of protection exposes the room to total vulnerability. Without a municipal designation, the cultural value of nearly 25 years of music has not produced an automatic legal guarantee. Whether the structure undergoes residential conversion, becomes a retail storefront, or survives under a different name is an open question. For now, the schedule remains full, the doors remain open, and the countdown continues. For nearly 25 years, 66 North 6th Street operated under two names but shared a single, immutable address. Inside these brick walls, the room accumulated a history that cannot be measured by a property deed or reduced to a real estate filing. This is the stage where a raw, anti-authoritarian punk collective sparked a municipal permit battle, where Richard Linklater captured the chaotic energy of schoolhouse rock, and where a fragile, brilliant songwriter gave his final New York performances. It is the room where future arena headliners, long before they could sell out massive stadiums, stood just feet away from a crowd of 650 people on a Tuesday night. Here, the boundary between artist and audience disappeared in the heat of a crowded room, establishing a legacy of physical connection that defined Brooklyn's musical identity. But when the building was sold for $14 million, none of that cultural capital was recorded on the balance sheet. The transaction operated on a cold, quantitative logic, one where physical space is valued in square feet and projected commercial returns rather than artistic significance. The promoters built their entire brand on the slow, deliberate work of finding artists before they achieved global fame. Yet that decades-long effort was completely invisible to the property market. This room was a training ground, a place where mistakes were allowed and where audiences experienced music at its most intimate and unvarnished. It stood as a monument to what cannot be manufactured in a corporate boardroom, a physical, organic community built note by note, show by show, over a quarter-century of shared experience. As the clock runs down toward the end of 26, the building's physical future remains entirely unknown. No plans have been confirmed, no demolition has been filed, and no municipal protections exist to safeguard the space. The music, the discoveries, and the shared memories that occurred inside 66 North 6th Street between 2001 and 2026 have already happened, and no real estate transaction can undo them. The room has already served its purpose, proving that culture is made in small, crowded spaces rather than high-rise offices. The defining performances of a generation are already safe within these walls. But as the countdown continues, the unresolved question remains for Brooklyn and the wider city. What is a room worth to a community when its cultural infrastructure is valued primarily as real estate? The countdown to December 31st, 2026 continues with every chord played. As the lights remain bright at 66 North 6th Street, Brooklyn faces an unresolved future. The question is no longer just about the fate of one legendary stage, but how a city retains its soul when irreplaceable cultural infrastructure is treated merely as real estate. Some things cannot be rebuilt. Share your thoughts in the comments below.